My name is Sarah, and right now I'm sitting on the VIP upper deck of a multi-million-dollar luxury cruise liner, floating somewhere off the breathtaking coast of Santorini, Greece. The ocean breeze is perfect, the sun is kissing my skin, and I am currently sipping a glass of vintage Dom Perignon that costs more than most people's car insurance. Sitting across from me is David. He's handsome, sharply dressed, and flashing me a $1 million smile. We look like the perfect couple celebrating a romantic getaway, but we aren't a couple, not even close. We are an execution squad. If you look just 15 feet to my left, sitting at the corner table, you'll see my husband of 12 years, Mark, and clinging to his arm like a designer accessory is Jessica, the 20-something VP of marketing he just hired 6 months ago. Right now, Mark isn't looking at the gorgeous Aegean Sea. He isn't enjoying his 5-star lobster tail. No, Mark is staring dead at me. His face is the color of wet ash. He is sweating through his custom-tailored linen shirt. His jaw is literally hanging open, and I can visibly see the absolute, unfiltered terror in his eyes. He looks like a man who just realized he stepped on a landmine and he's waiting for the click. Jessica hasn't noticed yet. She's too busy taking selfies for her Instagram, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire world, her fake, stolen, home-wrecking little world, is about to be violently ripped apart in front of 3,000 wealthy strangers. They thought they were incredibly smart. They thought they could sneak away on a 10-day Mediterranean fantasy on my dime, while leaving me back home in the suburbs, totally clueless. But Mark didn't know one crucial detail. I didn't just find out about his dirty little secret. I brought Jessica's fiancé along for the ride, and we aren't just here to ruin their vacation. We are here to systematically dismantle their entire lives, empty their bank accounts, and burn their reputations to the ground. If you have ever been manipulated, if you've ever had a toxic narcissist gaslight you into thinking you are crazy, or if you just love a cold, calculated, deeply satisfying revenge story, you are going to want to grab a snack and settle in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I'm about to show you exactly how to play the game of chess against a cheater and how to deliver the ultimate checkmate. To understand the sheer magnitude of this destruction, we have to rewind the clock. Exactly 3 days ago, I was living what I thought was the American dream. It was a Tuesday morning. The house was quiet. I was standing in my massive kitchen, pouring a cup of coffee and making a mental checklist of all the chores I had to run. Mark came downstairs carrying his leather weekender bag, looking stressed, rubbing his temples, and playing the role of the overworked, devoted husband perfectly. "I cannot tell you how much I am dreading this trip, Sarah," he sighed, kissing me on the forehead. His cologne smelled expensive, a stark contrast to his supposed destination. 5 days in Cleveland for a regional sales conference. It's going to be brutal. Crappy hotel food, boring presentations, and sleeping in a twin bed. "Where, get back. You're the best," he said. "Get back." "You're the best," he said, giving me that practiced, charming smile that I fell in love with a decade ago. "I'll call you from the airport." And just like that, he walked out the door. I watched his luxury SUV pull out of the driveway, feeling a pang of guilt that I got to stay in our beautiful home while he had to suffer in Ohio to provide for us. I was such a fool. 2 hours after Mark left, I went into his home office to water his stupid fiddle leaf fig tree. As I was wiping down his desk, his backup iPad, the one we supposedly shared for family photos and smart home controls, lit up. Ping. It wasn't an email. It wasn't a text. It was an Apple Wallet push notification. Because Mark and I shared the same Apple family sharing plan, occasionally, our devices would sync weird background data. He thought he had turned all the sharing features off, but he missed one little toggle in the settings: Sync Wallet and Apple Pay passes. I glanced at the screen, expecting to see a digital boarding pass for a Southwest flight to Cleveland. Instead, my blood went completely ice cold. The notification read, "Your VIP boarding pass for the Royal Grandeur is ready. Departure, Barcelona, Spain. Cabin 11044, Owner's Suite. Guests, Mark Davis and Jessica Lawson. Time literally stopped. You know that feeling when you miss a step on a staircase in the dark? That sudden jolt of pure panic in your chest? Multiply that by 1,000,000. My ears started ringing. Barcelona? A cruise? Jessica Lawson? Jessica, the 26-year-old marketing hire. Right, the girl with the perfect blowout and the overly bubbly personality who came to our house for the company Christmas party 3 months ago. The girl who drank my wine, complimented my interior design, and looked me dead in the eyes while telling me how lucky I was to have a boss like Mark. My hands were shaking violently as I unlocked the iPad. My brain was screaming at me to stop, telling me there had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe it was a corporate retreat. Maybe he booked it for us and put her name by mistake. The denial was strong, but the truth was stronger. I bypassed the Apple Wallet and went straight into his synced Gmail app. He had changed his password recently, but he forgot that the iPad's Mail app didn't require a logout. I typed in Royal Grandeur in the search bar. It was a slaughterhouse of betrayal. Boom. Over 50 emails loaded instantly, not just the cruise confirmation. I'm talking about digital receipts from Victoria's Secret shipped to her apartment, e-tickets to a Broadway show from 6 months ago, the weekend he told me he was visiting his sick mother in upstate New York. And then I found the crown jewel, the smoking gun that completely shattered my reality. It was an email thread between him and Jessica from the night before. Jessica wrote, "I can't believe we get 10 whole days without you having to hide from the ball and chain. I've got the agent provocateur lingerie packed. See you at the airport, Daddy." Mark replied, "I'm counting the minutes, babe. Cleveland is going to be the best trip of my life. I'll think sucks. Love you." I didn't cry, not right away. I think my brain short-circuited. 12 years. I supported this man when he was eating ramen noodles and running a failing startup out of our garage. I took a second job to pay his business loans. I built his life. And he was casually referring to me as the ball and chain while dropping $25,000 on a Mediterranean cruise with a girl who was still in middle school when we got married. A lesser woman would have completely lost her mind. A lesser woman would have called him right then and there, screaming into the phone, demanding answers, threatening divorce, and throwing his expensive golf clubs onto the front lawn. But I didn't do any of that. As I sat on the floor of his office staring at the wall, the initial shock melted away and something else took its place. Something much darker, something freezing cold. If Mark wanted to play games, he was about to find out that I didn't just know the rules, I owned the damn casino. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to let him get on that plane. But first, I needed to make a phone call. Because while digging through Jessica's Instagram to torture myself, I noticed a very prominent or sparkling diamond ring on her left hand. Jessica wasn't just a homewrecker, she was an engaged homewrecker. And her fiancé, David, deserved to know exactly what kind of snake he was sleeping next to. It was time to lawyer up, pack a bag, and go hunting. You don't just wake up one morning and realize you're married to a covert narcissist. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow drip. It's 1,000 tiny paper cuts to your self-esteem until you're bleeding out and apologizing to them for making a mess. Looking at those cruise tickets, my entire 12-year marriage flashed before my eyes. But this time, the rose-colored glasses were off. I finally saw the massive, glaring red flags I had been completely blind to. When Mark and I met, we had nothing. And I mean nothing. We lived in a terrible one-bedroom apartment with a broken AC unit. I was working 2 jobs, waitressing at night and doing admin work by day, just to keep the lights on while he poured every ounce of his energy into his logistics startup. I was his rock. I proofread his business pitches. I cooked his meals. I literally drained my modest savings account to buy him a tailored suit for his first major investor meeting. And it worked. The company took off. But as his bank account grew, his ego mutated. Within 5 years, he was making high 6 figures. We bought the big house in the suburbs, complete with the manicured lawn and the overbearing HOA. But I slowly became less of a partner and more of a prop. I was what society calls the starter wife, the woman who builds the man, only to be replaced by a newer, shinier model once he reaches the top. The gaslighting was textbook. If I asked him why he was coming home at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday smelling like expensive whiskey, he wouldn't just deny doing anything wrong. He would spin it around on me. "I'm out here killing myself to provide this lifestyle for you, Sarah, and you're going to interrogate me. You sound crazy right now. You're acting completely toxic and insecure." He threw the word toxic at me so often that I actually started going to therapy because I thought I was the problem. I thought I wasn't being supportive enough. Meanwhile, this man was secretly funding a double life. But sitting there on his office floor, holding that iPad, the fog completely lifted. I wasn't crazy. I was right. And my grief instantly metabolized into pure, unfiltered rage. Give a betrayed woman an iPad, an unlimited data plan, and 2 hours of uninterrupted time, and she will find out more than the FBI. I started with Jessica, Miss VP of Marketing. Her Instagram profile was public, which was her first fatal mistake. It was a perfectly curated shrine to her own vanity. Brunch aesthetics, mirror selfies in designer clothes that she definitely couldn't afford on her actual salary, and endless quotes about protecting her peace. Please. But as I scrolled back exactly 6 months, right around the time Mark hired her, the subtle changes began. Suddenly, there were photos of her holding a glass of champagne in what looked suspiciously like the passenger seat of Mark's Porsche. A picture of a diamond tennis bracelet with the caption, "Spoiled by the best boss ever. Hashtag work perks." I wanted to throw up, but I kept scrolling. And then I hit the jackpot. 3 months ago, a post with over 500 likes. The caption read, "I said yes to a lifetime of love with my soulmate, David. I can't wait to be your wife." I stared at the picture of the happy fiancé, David. He looked like a genuinely nice guy. According to his tagged profile, he was a successful software architect. He looked so happy, holding her like she was the center of his universe. He had absolutely no idea that his beautiful fiancée was currently packing crotchless agent provocateur lingerie to go ride my husband on a super yacht across the Mediterranean. Right at that moment, my phone buzzed on the desk. It was Mark, calling from the airport. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to answer the phone and unleash hell. I wanted to scream so loud my vocal cords snapped. I wanted to tell him I knew everything, that I was packing a bag, and that he could kiss half his assets goodbye. But I stopped. I remembered something my therapist had taught me about dealing with narcissists, the gray rock method. When you deal with a toxic manipulator, they feed on your emotional reactions. Your anger, your tears, your panic, that's their fuel. It makes them feel powerful. If you want to defeat them, you have to become a gray rock, uninteresting, unresponsive, emotionally flat. Give them nothing. Let them think they are entirely in control. I took 3 deep breaths, smoothed my hair even though he couldn't see me, and answered the phone with the sweetest, most oblivious voice I could muster. "Hey, honey," I chimed. "Hey, babe," Mark said. There was a lot of background noise, the echoing announcements of a massive airport terminal. "Just about to board. God. This flight to Cleveland is delayed. The gate is a mess. I'm already exhausted." In the background, very faintly, I heard an intercom voice with a slight Spanish accent announce, "Final boarding call for Flight 882 to Barcelona." I closed my eyes and smiled a dark, twisted smile. "Oh no, that sounds awful, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Just get some rest on the plane, okay? I love you." "Love you too, babe. I'll text you when I land. Might be late, so don't wait up." "I won't. Have a great trip." Click. The trap was set. He was on the plane. He was locked in a metal tube for the next 9 hours with no Wi-Fi, completely unreachable, floating high above the Atlantic Ocean on a cloud of his own arrogance. He thought he was invincible. I immediately went back to David's LinkedIn profile. I found the main phone number for his software firm. I dialed it, navigated the automated menu, and asked the receptionist to connect me to David's direct line. "Tell him it's an absolute emergency regarding Jessica," I said, my voice shaking with a potent mix of adrenaline and fury. A minute later, a deep professional voice came on the line. "Hello, this is David. Is Jessica okay? Has something happened?" I took a breath. There was no easy way to blow up a stranger's life. "Hi, David," I said, keeping my voice dead calm. "You don't know me. My name is Sarah. I'm calling you from my husband's home office. Your fiancée, Jessica, isn't in a marketing workshop this week. She is currently on a first-class flight to Spain with my husband. They are boarding a 10-day luxury cruise together." Dead silence on the other end. Who is this? Is this some kind of sick prank?" David's voice cracked, the denial kicking in instantly. "I wish it was," I replied. "Check your email in exactly 30 seconds. I'm forwarding you the cruise confirmation, the flight itinerary, and the receipt for the lingerie she bought with his corporate card. When you're done throwing up, call me back to this number." I didn't have to wait long. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. And that was the exact moment the resistance was formed. It was time to lawyer up, pack our bags, and bring the war to the Mediterranean. When you drop a nuclear bomb on someone's life, you don't do it over a text message, and you certainly don't do it alone. 2 hours after that phone call, I met David in person at a secluded hotel bar downtown. I didn't know what to expect. Part of me thought he might be in total denial, or worse, that he might try to defend her. But the second I walked into that bar and saw him sitting in the corner booth, nursing a neat bourbon with a look of pure, unadulterated devastation on his face. I knew we were members of the same miserable club. I slid into the booth across from him. I didn't say hello. I just unzipped my leather tote bag, pulled out a thick manila folder containing 50 pages of printed emails, receipts, and flight itineraries, and pushed it across the table. I watched his heart break in real time. It's a terrible thing to witness. He saw the lingerie charges, he saw the pet names. He saw the undeniable proof that the woman he was about to marry, the woman he had just bought a $40,000 engagement ring for, was nothing but a parasitic gold digger using him for a safety net while she played house with my millionaire husband. He didn't cry. He just closed the folder, took a slow sip of his bourbon, and looked at me with eyes that had gone completely cold. She told me she was going on a wellness retreat in Sedona with her bridesmaids, he said, his voice dangerously low. Oh, I paid for half of it. I gave her $5,000 yesterday to cover the luxury spa treatments. Well, I replied, tapping the cruise itinerary, unless Sedona has been relocated to the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, I'd say you just funded her couples massage with Mark. David let out a dry, bitter laugh, and then he dropped a bombshell of his own. As it turned out, Jessica wasn't just a homewrecker. She was a criminal. David was a software architect, which meant he knew his way around digital security. After our phone call, his intuition kicked in, and he did some digging into his own personal and business accounts. Jessica had been helping him manage some freelance invoices. In the span of 6 months, she had quietly skimmed nearly $30,000 from his business accounts into an offshore crypto wallet. She wasn't just cheating, she was embezzling. I already called my lawyer, David said, leaning back in the booth. The wedding is canceled. Our steps back on U.S. soil. That's good, I steps back on U.S. soil. That's good, I said, taking a sip of my martini. But it's not enough. If we just leave them, send them a text, and file for divorce, they win. They get a 10-day romantic vacation in Spain, sipping margaritas, playing the victims, and bonding over how crazy their exes are. I refuse to let them have peace. I want to burn their little fantasy world to the ground while they are standing inside it. David looked at me, an evil little smirk slowly forming on his face. So, what's the play? The play was simple. Total psychological warfare. I wasn't just going to lawyer up. I had already done that. I had frozen our joint savings accounts, moved my half of the liquid assets into a private trust, and retained the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state. But the real masterpiece was the cruise. And David got on his laptop right there in the bar. The Royal Grandeur was setting sail from Barcelona in exactly 24 hours. Because Mark had booked the owner's suite, the most expensive room on the ship, he was on the exclusive VIP deck. There's only one suite left on that deck, David muttered, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The Royal Loft. It's right next to theirs. They share a balcony partition. It costs $18,000. Book it, I said without missing a beat. Put it on Mark's corporate platinum Amex. Let him pay for his own execution. Click. Booked. The next 24 hours were a blur of pure adrenaline. David and I took a red-eye flight to Barcelona. We didn't sleep a wink. We just sat in first class, drinking bad coffee and mapping out our battle strategy. We weren't just going to confront them. We were going to haunt them. We were going to be the ghosts in their machine. By the time we arrived at the port of Barcelona, oika, the Mediterranean sun was blazing. The Royal Grandeur was massive, a floating city of excess and luxury. We used the VIP boarding lane. We were given champagne the second we stepped onto the glass-bottomed atrium. It was sickeningly romantic. Our suite was 1046. Mark and Jessica were in 1044, separated by nothing but a few inches of steel and drywall. We threw our bags into the room and immediately stepped out onto the sprawling private balcony. I could hear the ocean roaring below us. And then I heard something else. Oh my God, Mark, this suite is literally insane. It was Jessica. Her voice was unmistakable, shrill, entitled, and grating. Only the best for you, baby, Mark replied. His voice made my stomach physically turn. No nagging wife, no stressful meetings. Just you, me, and 10 days of paradise. Cheers. They had no idea. They thought they were in paradise, but paradise had just been boarded by the devil. The ship's horn blew, a massive, vibrating sound that shook the deck beneath our feet. The anchor was up. We were officially in international waters. There was nowhere for them to run, nowhere to hide, and absolutely zero chance of survival. Let the games begin. There is a very specific, deeply satisfying art to destroying a narcissist. You don't just confront them. That gives them the opportunity to lie, to spin the narrative, to make you look like the crazy, jealous wife. No. If you want to break a manipulator, you have to use their own weapon against them. You have to gaslight the gaslighter. You have to make them feel like they are completely losing their grip on reality. For the first 48 hours of the cruise, David and I were ghosts. We used the ship's app to track their reservations, always staying exactly one step ahead or one step behind. Our first move was petty, but I highly recommend it. Mark had booked them a $1,200 VIP couples hot stone massage. But because Mark had used his primary email to book the cruise, the one still logged into the iPad sitting on his desk back home, I had full access to his itinerary. 10 minutes before their appointment, I called the spa from my cell phone, pretending to be his personal assistant. I didn't just cancel the couple's massage. I modified it. I sat on my balcony, sipping an espresso, listening through the partition as Mark and Jessica returned to their suite an hour later. She was absolutely losing her marbles. I don't understand how they could downgrade us to a single deep tissue foot rub for a senior citizen, Jessica shrieked, slamming the balcony door. You promised me the VIP treatment, Mark? Whoa, this is humiliating. I don't know what happened, babe. I swear I booked the couple's package, Mark pleaded, sounding exhausted. The system must have glitched. David, sitting across from me on our balcony, silently raised his coffee mug in a toast. Round one went to us, but the real psychological torture started on day 3. The ship docked in Mykonos. Mark and Jessica had rented a private VIP cabana at an exclusive beach club. Naturally, David and I rented the cabana directly behind them, heavily shaded by palm trees. We watched them for an hour. The honeymoon phase was already cracking. Jessica was annoyed about the spa incident, and Mark was incessantly checking his phone, probably wondering why his oblivious wife back home hadn't texted him to check in on his miserable trip to Cleveland. I was strictly enforcing the no-contact rule. Silence is deafening to a guilty conscience. Then, it was time to make our physical debut. I waited until Jessica went to the restroom to reapply her lip gloss. Mark was sitting alone at the cabana bar, waiting for 2 mojitos. I put on my oversized Tom Ford sunglasses, adjusted my crimson dress, and walked right past him. I didn't stop. I didn't look at him. I just casually brushed past his shoulder, leaving a massive trail of my signature perfume in the air. Tom Ford Black Orchid, the exact perfume I wore on our wedding day. I didn't have to turn around to know what happened. I heard the glass shatter. I heard him gasp. For the rest of the afternoon, Mark was a paranoid wreck. He kept looking over his shoulder. He was sweating profusely. He was short with Jessica. He thought his mind was playing tricks on him. He thought his guilt was manifesting into physical hallucinations. He was literally spiraling in real time. But David wasn't about to let Jessica off the hook either. That night, Jessica was playing blackjack, flashing her stolen money around like she was a Kardashian. David tipped a waiter $50 to deliver her a very specific drink, a vibrant blue desert-themed cocktail called an agave sunrise. I didn't order this, she told the waiter. Compliments of the gentleman across the floor, miss, the waiter replied, pointing. He said to tell you, enjoy Sedona. Jessica physically shoved her chair back, knocking it over. Our balcony that night, the walls next door balcony that night. The walls next door were practically shaking. The screaming match was cinematic. I saw him, Mark. I swear to God, David is on this ship. Jessica was sobbing hysterically. He knows. He knows about the money. He knows about us. You are acting psychotic, Jessica, Mark yelled back, his voice cracking with his own suppressed panic. David is in Chicago. You're just stressed. We are thousands of miles away. Don't call me crazy. You've been acting like a paranoid freak all day, she screamed. They were turning on each other. The trust was gone. The romantic getaway was dead. We had successfully poisoned their paradise. But I wasn't satisfied with just making them paranoid. I wanted blood, and the perfect opportunity was just hours away. Tomorrow night was the captain's gala, the most exclusive, formal, heavily attended event on the entire 10-day voyage. All the VIP guests, corporate sponsors, and the ship's elite officers would be in the grand ballroom. Everyone dressed to the nines. It was the perfect stage. The trap was fully set. It was time to stop hiding in the shadows, step into the spotlight, and drop the guillotine. There's a famous saying, revenge is a dish best served cold. But honestly, that's garbage. Revenge is best served under a massive crystal chandelier, surrounded by 3,000 millionaires, while wearing a $3,000 gown bought with your cheating husband's money. Tonight was the captain's gala, the crown jewel of the cruise. The dress code was strictly black tie, and the grand ballroom was packed with corporate sponsors, wealthy socialites, and the ship's elite officers. David and I didn't just walk into that ballroom, we descended upon it. I spotted them immediately. They were standing near the main stage. They looked like they had aged 5 years in the last 3 days. Mark was sweating through his tuxedo shirt, constantly scanning the room like a hunted animal. Jessica was glaring at him, their toxic little paradise completely shattered by the paranoia we had planted. It was time to put them out of their misery. David, being a senior software architect, had spent the last 2 hours sitting in our suite, quietly bypassing the ship's open-source AV network. The ballroom featured a massive, high-definition LED screen behind the stage, currently looping a boring welcome video from the captain. David looked at me, gave a subtle nod, and tapped a single button on his phone. The giant LED screen flickered, went black for a split second, and then it lit up the entire room. But it wasn't the captain's face anymore. The collective gasp that sucked the air out of that ballroom was the sweetest sound I have ever heard in my entire life. 3,000 wealthy, judgmental strangers stopped dead in their tracks. People lowered their champagne glasses. An elderly woman in diamonds actually clutched her pearls. Mark turned around to look at the screen. I didn't wait in the shadows anymore. I walked straight down the center staircase, parting the crowd like the Red Sea. My heels clicked loudly against the marble. Mark slowly turned his head away from the screen and locked eyes with me. His knees literally buckled. He grabbed a cocktail table to keep from collapsing. "Sarah?" he choked out. His voice was barely a whisper, completely stripped of his usual narcissistic arrogance. "What? How?" "Hi, honey," I said, my voice projecting perfectly across the dead silent room. I stopped exactly 3 feet away from him. "Cleveland looks a little different than I remember. The hotel food seems much better, though." Jessica was hyperventilating. She was looking around frantically, realizing that hundreds of people were staring at her with pure, unadulterated disgust. And then, her worst nightmare stepped out from behind me. "Hello, Jessica," David said, his voice smooth as glass. Jessica let out a horrifying, choked sob. "David, please. It's not what it looks like." "You're right," David interrupted, his voice echoing in the silent room. "It's worse." "You didn't just cheat on me, Jess," David announced loudly, making sure every single corporate sponsor and rich investor in the room heard him. "You stole $30,000 from my business accounts to fund your little double life. My lawyers have the IP logs, the offshore crypto wallet is frozen, and the FBI has a very thick file waiting for you the second this boat docks in Miami." Jessica completely broke. She fell to her knees, sobbing hysterically, burying her face in her hands, her designer dress pooling around her on the floor. Mark, still trying to salvage his massive ego, stepped forward, his hands shaking violently. "Sarah, please, you have to stop this. You're embarrassing us. We can go back to the suite and talk about this like adults." "Talk?" I cut him off, laughing bitterly. "Mark, you spent 12 years telling me I was crazy. You gaslit me into therapy. You treated me like a broken appliance while you used our joint savings to fly your 20-something employee around the world. There is no more talking." I looked him dead in his terrified, pathetic eyes. "I already moved my half of the assets into a private trust. The locks on the house have been changed. Your bags are packed and sitting in a Motel 6 back in the suburbs. My lawyer will be serving you with divorce papers on Monday." I dropped my wedding ring into his empty, unshattered scotch glass on the table. Clink. "Enjoy the rest of your vacation, Mark. I hear the single life is really expensive." The crowd's reaction was everything I dreamed of. No one felt sorry for them. The wealthy socialites stared at Jessica like she was a diseased rat. The businessmen looked at Mark with pure contempt. Nobody trusts a man who steals from his own wife to sleep with his employee. Mark couldn't take it. The narcissist's worst fear is public humiliation. He covered his face, grabbed Jessica by the arm, and literally dragged her out of the ballroom while she wailed uncontrollably. The crowd actually parted to let them run away, like they were contagious. David and I stood there in the center of the ballroom. The giant screen behind us finally flickered back to the captain's welcome video. A waiter walked by, looking absolutely stunned. David casually reached out, grabbed 2 glasses of vintage champagne from the tray, and handed one to me. We clinked our glasses together as the orchestra, completely unsure of what else to do, nervously started playing a waltz again. It was, without a doubt, the greatest night of my life. They say the truth will set you free, But first, it will piss you off. And let me tell you, the remaining 5 days of that cruise were a masterclass in watching two toxic people completely turn on each other. After the incident at the captain's gala, Mark and Jessica became the most hated people on the Royal Grandeur. They couldn't walk into a dining room without people whispering, pointing, or blatantly laughing at them. The ship's security actually had to ask them to stay in their suite for their own comfort. 10 days of absolute luxury, and they spent the second half of it locked in a room, eating cold room service and tearing each other to shreds. But the real punishment started the second they stepped off that boat. Mark thought he could come home and sweet-talk his way out of it. He thought his manipulative gaslighting would work one last time. But narcissists always underestimate the strength of a woman who has finally had enough. When Mark landed, he took an Uber to our house, only to find his key didn't work. The locks were changed, the security codes were wiped, and a very polite but firm process server was waiting on the porch to hand him a thick stack of divorce papers. I had his luggage packed and dropped off at a cheap motel 2 towns over. But that wasn't even the best part. You see, Mark used his corporate Platinum Amex to book that little $25,000 love nest. And because several major investors for his logistics company were actually at the captain's gala and saw the whole spectacle, news traveled fast. By Monday morning, his board of directors held an emergency meeting. Using company funds to finance an affair with a subordinate? That's a massive liability. He was fired, stripped of his equity, blacklisted from the industry, and permanently banned from the cruise line. He went from a high-flying millionaire to a guy eating microwave ramen in a motel room, completely cut off from the lifestyle I helped him build. And Jessica? Well, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. When she landed in Chicago, David wasn't waiting for her. The police were. David had handed over all the IP logs, the fake invoices, and the bank statements to his lawyers and the authorities. Stealing $30,000 isn't a misunderstanding, it's felony wire fraud. Her fairy tale wedding was canceled. Her reputation was nuked. She had to drain whatever money she had left to hire a criminal defense attorney, and she's currently facing a very real possibility of doing actual prison time. The VP of marketing is now practically unemployable. The trash didn't just take itself out, it spontaneously combusted. It's been 6 months since the cruise from hell. The divorce was finalized last week because I held all the cards and all the evidence. My lawyer absolutely steamrolled him. I kept the house, which I promptly sold, and used the money to buy this beautiful little condo right on the coast. No overbearing HOA, no toxic husband making me feel small. Just me, the ocean, and my absolute peace. And as for David, we still talk. Actually, we met up for coffee just this morning. A lot of people ask me if we ended up together. It sounds like the perfect movie ending, right? 2 betrayed people finding love in the ashes. But the truth is, that's not reality. When you get out of a toxic, manipulative relationship, the absolute worst thing you can do is jump straight into another one. David and I have a bond that no one else will ever understand. We saved each other, but we also recognized that we both needed time to heal. We set firm boundaries. We decided to be incredible friends instead of rushing a trauma bond romance. And honestly, it's the healthiest relationship I've had in a decade. If you are watching this, and you are sitting in a house right now feeling like you are crazy because your partner keeps moving the goalposts, if you are constantly apologizing for things you didn't do, or if you feel like you are shrinking yourself just to keep the peace, listen to me. You are not crazy. You're being manipulated. Narcissists will drain your light to fuel their own ego. They will use you as a stepping stone and make you feel like it's your privilege to carry their weight. Do not let them. Know your worth. Set your boundaries. Document everything. Lawyer up, and go strictly no contact. The sweetest revenge isn't always a dramatic confrontation on a luxury cruise ship. Sometimes, the most devastating thing you can do to a toxic person is to simply cut them off, take your power back, and go live a brilliantly happy life without them. Because at the end of the day, they have to live with themselves, and you get to be free. Thank you so much for letting me share my story. If this helped you, or if you just loved seeing karma do its job perfectly, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below and let me know. What is the craziest red flag you ever ignored? Let's talk about it in the comments. Until next time, stay strong, trust your gut, and never let anyone dim your light.